I made a video a few weeks back talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars and where they could potentially be in the 2022-2023 NFL season. However, a lot's changed since that video, so let's talk about how the Jacksonville Jaguars broke the wide receiver market and some of the moves that they made in free agency and what that could potentially mean for their next season and their future. So obviously we got to kick it off with Christian Kirk, who signed a 4-year, $72 million contract with the Jaguars. Obviously he will be leaving the Arizona Cardinals. But before we talk about his contract and talking about whether he deserves it or not, let's look at Christian Kirk as a receiver. 25 years old, so very young, and coming off an incredible season with the Arizona Cardinals, where he finished with 77 receptions, 982 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Overall, a really solid season with the Cardinals, especially when he was going into the season as a number 3 option on that offense. Obviously, he was behind DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Green, 2 receivers that have been all-time greats, at least over the past decade. They've been the best receivers in the NFL. So Christian Kirk had, a lot of obstacles, but due to injuries to both DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Green, he had a ton of opportunity, and he took advantage of that, finishing with just under 1,000 yards. That's a really good season. At only 25 years old, he was going to get paid, right? I think that's something that people don't talk about. You're going to have to overpay in free agency. It's just a thing that's known. You want a player, you're going to have to overpay, and especially when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, when you have a team that just hasn't performed well, you're going to have to overpay to get players, and that's exactly what they did. They wanted Christian Kirk. They went out and got him. They secured him, giving him $72 million in the process. Now, I know when it came out, a lot of it's not guaranteed. It's a lot of incentives, but I do believe that was like a $20 million signing bonus and maybe like $40 million guaranteed, something close around that range, I would say. Overall, Christian Kirk, I think he's a really solid signing for the Jaguars. You look at their wide receiver core last year, they needed some upgrades. Christian Kirk is going to be an instant upgrade on that offense. Going to be really huge for a young quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Now let's look at what some of the other things the Jaguars have done. They signed Foley Farakasi, who is a run-stopping nose tackle basically in the NFL. Now I'm a Jets fan. Might be a little biased here. I think he's a really solid player. However, the Jets had one of the worst run defenses in the entire NFL, and the Jaguars, I believe they also had one of the worst run defenses. And the Jets, despite having Foley Farakasi, who I think is a solid player, they still weren't able to have him just, completely dominate the run game like we see with other nose tackles or defensive tackles. So I don't know how much it's going to change it, but I think they're giving him about $10 or $11 million per year for 3 years. So overall, I think it's a good contract for both Foley Farakasi and the Jacksonville Jaguars to try and transform that defense a little bit. Now, one of the other big signings the Jaguars made is on that offensive line, signing Brandon Sherf. Coming from the Washington Commanders, he's been a solid offensive lineman basically his entire career and was really highly touted, I believe, in this free agency. The Jaguars, I'm sure, were the team willing to spend the most based on that Christian Kirk deal, which is why I think he opted to go to the Jaguars. And I saw some people ripping him always all about the money. He wants to go to the Jaguars over playing for a good team now. Yeah, I think most people would want to be financially secure. And he's played with Washington. He's used to losing at this point. And, I think the Jaguars have a ton more upside right now. So I think he is making a not a lateral move. I think he's making a positive move for his career in terms of winning as well. And the other key signing I want to talk about is Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram has had some doubters throughout his entire career. He made the Pro Bowl. And some people have hated on him just due to the fact that he's so inconsistent. Now, Doug Peterson, obviously when he was the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, he saw Evan Ingram a lot being, having to defend him when he was on the Giants. And I think he's going to know his strengths and weaknesses really well. It's just dependent on if he could use his strengths well, because when Evan Ingram is playing well, he's a really dominant NFL tight end. He, is very versatile. He can make crazy catches. He does struggle with drops sometimes. So if he could fix that, I think it's a huge signing for the Jaguars. I always talk about in my videos how I think young quarterbacks need safety nets, and the biggest safety net I think you could have is your tight end. They're sometimes the biggest players out in the secondary when the quarterback is looking for somebody. So when you could have a good one, it's really huge for your young quarterbacks. Basically, your check down guy, but it's not a running back check down. You're going to get 5 yards. He's going to be able to outmuscle people. So I think it's a huge signing for the Jaguars. It was a desperate need, I think, for them. That's just a personal opinion, though. I always say that tight ends are huge for young quarterbacks, and I don't think it's any different here. Then they signed Darius Williams from the Los Angeles Rams. Underrated player just due to the amount of superstars that the Rams defense had in their Super Bowl run, but overall a young cornerback going into his 6th year. I think it's going to be a huge signing for the Jaguars, who kind of struggled on defense, but to be fair, they struggled all around, so I don't really know if you could pinpoint anything, but I think Darius Williams, a young cornerback, is going to be a huge get for this Jaguars team. Now, the biggest loss I think the Jaguars had in this free agency was losing DJ Chark. Now, I understand they signed Zay Jones, who people are also saying got a ridiculous contract. And yeah, he did. He got 3 years, $24 million with $14 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money. And DJ Chark, I know he got a little bit of a bigger contract from the Detroit Lions, and I know he was injured last year, so you don't really know what he's going to be looking like this season. I'm just surprised that the Jaguars were willing to give Zay Jones as much money as they did and not willing to pay a little bit more to get DJ Chark. A little bit surprising to me. However, that's the option, the direction the Jaguars decided to go in. So let's look at what this potentially could mean for them, right? They added some new wide receivers in Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. Their defense got Foley Farakasi, Darius Williams. I think the Jaguars went in the right direction. I know, like I just said, I think it's a big loss in DJ Chark, but they signed 2 receivers to replace him, and that Jaguars wide receiver room was so thin last year, and overall, just not good. So I think signing 2 receivers is going to help in any way, and you're going into one of the deepest receiver class. I feel like we've had that the last few years, but this seems like another deep receiver class. So the Jaguars, I think, are going to have their opportunity to pick one in the 2nd or 3rd round, depending on where they feel the best option for them may be. But let's look. In the number 1 overall Jacksonville Jaguars, who are they going to be picking at the end of April? Now, in that last video, I talked about how I think they were going to take Ingram, Ekwonu, or Evan Neal. Now that you know what they've done in free agency, they signed back their offensive tackle. They signed Brandon Sherf. I don't think they take a tackle at number 1 overall anymore. I thought it was going to be a really good pick for them. However, I don't think so anymore, so I think they're going Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson has been the player I think that's hasn't had any falls, hasn't really had any rises throughout this offseason so far. We look at Kayvon Thibodeau. He was the player that was basically number 1 overall in all mock drafts throughout the entire college season. All of a sudden, there's some rumors saying that he's not a good locker room guy. He doesn't have passion for football. I think those are ridiculous, but I think you're the Jaguars. You don't want to take any risks. Take Aiden Hutchinson, solid defensive end, going to be able to help out that defense a little bit more. I don't think you're taking a wide receiver number 1 overall. You'd be absolutely nuts to do that. So you got to look at edge at number 1. You got to look at offensive line. And like I said, I don't think they're taking offensive line. You look at quarterback. They're definitely not taking a quarterback. And basically, those are the only positions you take at number 1 overall. Unless there's a crazy prospect out there. So overall, I think that's the direction the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be going in. Aiden Hutchinson, maybe a wide receiver in the 2nd round. That's what I would like to see because I think they need some more dynamic playmakers on that offense to help out Trevor Lawrence. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see from the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're a Jaguars fan, what do you think of their offseason? And if you're not a Jaguars fan, do you think this team is going to be absolute trash this year? Or do you think they're going to have a little bit of a better season? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. It helps out the channel so much. And enjoy the rest of your day, guys.